Hey, what's up, everybody? BDF 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so this is about my first therapy session in like 6 days, 7 days. I just been handling it organically. What that means to me is when I feel like it, I'll do it. When I don't feel like it, I don't do it. That may be 7 times a day. That may be once a week. Uh, I don't expect that this is going away as far as my desire to speak freely into the camera. That's not. But I also don't assume that everybody's waiting for it like it's a Laker video. I think probably most of the people who are watching them are probably watching them in succession, and they have almost 400 of them to watch. So for me, the way I looked at this particular week is like, if I'm to guess, most of the people who are watching this won't even realize the time between the last therapy session. That's kind of how it is when I make playlists too. It's like, in the grand scheme of things, when I look at all my playlists, them 3 weeks that I may have took off, or that month I may have took off, when I look at the playlist, there's no difference. Even when you look at the dates between the last one, it's like it's only like 10 days, 12 days, something. So it's like I've learned to allow myself to be a bit more organic rather than to turn on the camera and speak when I don't feel like it, or turn on the camera and talk about something I don't really want to talk about. The only thing that I really wanted to talk about on this camera was all the free agency, and as you can see, I ain't take no stops on that. So I just want to encourage everybody to go check out the old therapy sessions and stuff like that if you want to see what this has all been about. But yeah, everything has been pretty solid, I guess. I've been working out a lot more to try to make up for that 1 month, I guess you could say, May. I think it was May or April. I'd say May, where everything really got stressful for me. And I ended up eating some food that probably ain't all that bad, but since I eat so strict, it went into my energy, so to speak. It took away some of my energy for this current month. So I'm trying to ramp it back up to where I was at the end of December. Around New Year's week, I was pushing and working out and really hitting the weights as hard as I am this week. It's that kind of thing. So hopefully that'll pay off, and I'll get back to the way I want to be physically. Because last month was some bull crap for me with the stress, and then the workout habits just not being consistent. It was, and then the food. Your boy need to get back on point. So that's what this week has really been about. Since I anticipate having to move, and obviously, and anticipate not having a lot of help. My thinking is strengthen the body, because you got to move some heavy stuff and have some inconsistency at some point very soon. So Scarlet Letter has not yet been on my door. The sheriff ain't came yet. After all that worrying about them showing up on that Friday, they still ain't showed up. But that's not something I take lightly. I talked to my uncle, let him know what my situation would be and how much I will need from them, or at least to start, because I know this is going to be a situation where I'm going to need some help if they're going to give it to me. It's going to be needed for a little bit. But nevertheless, it's one of those situations where I've been putting it off. So last week was a bit stressful, trying to make money stretch for myself while trying to convince myself to ask my uncle to help me. Even though I'd already told him what I needed, for my mindset, for whatever reason, once they told me it was open-ended, I felt guilty. It was like, all right, I don't know how much to ask. I don't know what is appropriate, and I certainly don't want to ask for too much, and I definitely don't want to leave myself without enough. So I stressed over that for a good 6-7 days before I even told them what I needed. And so that's just kind of been the struggle for me. Even though I wasn't doing these videos, I was going out, still doing my walks. I did one yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so that's that I've been keeping going, but I just honestly didn't want to do therapy session while I was walking. I really didn't. I wanted to walk in peace and be in quiet. And that was it. Literally, these last couple of days, I just ain't want to do no damn therapy session. So I did not. But I figured today felt pretty good because I saw something that prompted me to speak. I didn't want to talk about myself. Spend the first 4.5 minutes of this video doing that. But after that, I wanted to get into what it was. And what it was just seeing footage of something that I've seen a scenario of a million times. I've seen this where a politician will be walking through a courtroom and somebody will ask them a question about something they voted through, and they get to keep on walking, and they go into whatever little chamber they're going into without having answered the question. And it just prompted me to speak because I just think that that's we've allowed something into our situation in regards to like laws. We allow laws to be passed without having vetted the people who are passing the laws. And what I mean is, yeah, we vote them. Yeah, we vote for these people. But half the time when you look at a ballot, if you're not overly thrown into the subject of politics, no different than the subject of basketball when you're voting on all-star players. If you don't really know what you're doing or you really haven't followed what's going on, then chances are you're not being very responsible in your choice when voting because you don't know what's going on with who, and you're just kind of reeling off names. This is one of the reasons why, and I think I may be not against, but on the other side of the logic of the culture of this country. I just see it totally different when it comes to voting. I don't think it's responsible to vote at all unless you have studied and are smart enough to understand what it is you're voting for. I think the idea in this country and the culture in this country is mass voting. Everyone vote, whether you know what the hell you're doing or not, whether you know what's going on or not, whether you've studied or not. All voices must be accounted for. But that is manipulatable because we understand there are various levels of focus and an intellect that ultimately is not often found when the masses come together, and they haven't taught everyone how to think. They have kept education at different levels for different groups. And we know that not everybody in this country has been fed the same training, human school training. Not everybody's been given the same anything. A lot of us are freelancers in the world of morals, freelancers in the world of what matters, and live for money and live for satisfying our own inner struggles or whatever it is. There's a lot of people out here who are not for the betterment of the entire group. We are in a world where a lot of the cultures that we celebrate have taught us how to basically self-manifest and then more or less step on others to get what we want in a competitive world. So it's like, why would that people, that group, have it right as it pertains to this subject when they're probably just too busy and too distracted to get that focused in regards to these various different topics? But unlike sports, these things affect real life actions in your life. You vote this, and this guy in, and they're going to be voting all different types of stuff in by way of just them being present, and their connections politically are going to make it so that such and such and such gets done because they're on that side. So if we understand this and we keep voting these charismatic people in office who give us the same tired campaign copy and paste formula for 70 or 80 years in this country, it's the same campaign formula, same commercials, dogging the other side, same kissing the baby, rubbing the head of the dog. It's the same formula they've been using for 100 years in this country to make someone propped up to be charismatic enough for you to vote them in. After that, you may not even see their faces anymore. And in situations like what it is I just saw, where they voting stuff in that maybe isn't agreeable morally, and they don't have to even answer questions about it. They don't have to tell us why they're doing it. I legitimately don't understand why they're doing it. I just listen to both sides be very, very colorful in gaining my attention and trust by way of their charisma. And what I'm telling you is, charisma and likability have nothing to do with being structured and morally sound in regards to making decisions for entire peoples. And that should have been articulated a million different ways over the last 100 years. And has. Most definitely has. Which is why I fathom such a thing. I'm thankful that someone taught me to look at things from a deeper perspective. I'm thankful that I know not to look at every smiling face and appreciate what it is they're saying, because maybe it doesn't back their action. And I definitely understand that I have a right to ask anybody who's pushing things that affect my family and myself into law what it is they were thinking and why. this is in place. And if they can't give me a reasonable explanation, then I should have the right to have them ousted. They should not be in place anymore if they can make decisions that affect people's lives and not if they answer questions about it. They shouldn't be there. And so that's what comes to mind, man. I just think that, the subject itself was something that I think could be frustrating for a lot of people. And I don't assume to understand conundrums that are beyond my I don't know. I haven't done homework on what it is that is going on in regards to the conversation we're talking about, and that is abortion. I don't know. The question that they were giving the politician was, so you want little girls who have been forced upon to go to term with their children, 9-year-old girls who've been forced upon, they got to go to term with their children. And it's like, that's not the only thing going on in that conversation, but it is the question that was asked, and he was able to avoid it in such a way that made it as if he didn't need to answer that question, that question didn't have any validity to his concerns. And to me, it's like, I get, as a human being, I can allow, as a citizen, I can allow my mind to run with that unanswered question. And because of it, I can come to terms with all the different types of things about him and what he thinks of little girls who have been forced upon, all of these different things. When he's not willing to answer that question, he leaves the public with a million questions. And and it prompts frustration when those questions aren't answered. It may prompt rage in the mind of those who've been triggered by this. I think him not being willing to answer that question, or those questions, or politicians not being willing to answer questions to broaden it out, can be just as problematic as them pushing whatever it is that they should not be in. Because now you leave the public with wild understandings or misunderstandings about why you did what you did, and will prompt them to behave however their crazy mind may. And that's what also is part of a weird kind of tumble forward domino effect that I think can kind of be a thing going forward when people keep seeing stuff like this in their phones. Like a guy like that, he's not necessarily in a space. How do I articulate this? I think he needs more security. Now, after that footage is going around of him not answering the question, I legitimately think he's in danger. You understand what I'm saying? And it's because what that image provided, coupled with him not answering that specific question, all that's going to do is enact hurt in the hearts of those who care about what it is we're asking. You understand what I'm saying? It's hurt that's going to be, and that hurt is going to manifest a vitriol toward him. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, when we talk about energy on this channel, when we talk about all the different angles of paying attention to different things that matter and how to prevent certain things, politics needs to evolve in such a way, regardless of what their intentions are, regardless if they're bad as we think they are, or just we're misunderstanding what they're doing. They have got to find a way to connect with people if they want people to behave like people when stuff like this continues to be shown to us. You're going to lose the humanity in a lot of the people that are voting, because they feel like their voting doesn't matter in some cases, or they feel like those who are morally incorrect voting matters more. And morally incorrect is a subject, but that's not, it's about everybody's opinion and how they were raised and how they think of that. But the point is, that's going to be the going feeling, that the guys who don't care as much hold more weight in regards to how they vote. Those who want to marginalize, put people in certain boxes, those who want to see people separate, those who want to see people without choices, without freedoms, and without happiness in certain cases because of their groups, it seems like those people are starting to get more power in regards to how their voices are being heard and what it is they're voting toward. And that, I think, is a social experiment. That is a social experiment. That ain't just their turn now they get to enact what happens on us because they haven't for the last however 20 years when affirmative action and all these different race forced programs, because it's based on race, forced because a lot of people didn't want them there. I don't think they're just removing that stuff because it's time for the other side to get their way. I think this is just another leg of the same social experiment that was taking place 3 years ago when they put Black Lives Matter on every basketball floor and every t-shirt and this is the great opposite of that. They gave us Black Lives Matter. Now they're going to hit us 4 years later with the Black Lives and everybody lives don't matter. It's time for the racists to step up and get their power like it's, and that there is a natural reaction to that is going to likely be disruptive. And it's just disruptive. They know that there's a side of people who are extreme on one side, who want everything to be okay and we can all be hippies forever. And they got another side that's rather extreme as well, who have religious-based values that ultimately keep people, wearing chastity belts and muzzles under their mouths and, getting spanked every 3 minutes. Like, this type of stuff is extreme, but it exists. And because it exists, we need to not be extreme when reacting to everything, and they are enacting us to be extreme in our reactions by way of how they're handling us. When I was a little kid, I listened to conversations about various different things, like affirmative action, like different things that would allow black people to get into different jobs and to get hired for different things because they were not being, and there were individuals who were keeping them out because of their race. Well, the problem with the solution was the solution mimicked the problem. This is what I always say about my group and any other group that's not white supremacy that takes on the behavior or the traits of white supremacy. You are just mimicking the oppressor. You are not being better. Black supremacy, any other supremacy, it's not going to provide the right energy. Your group may get the supremacy, but you're now going to be the bad guy that you say they are. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't work. The math is still going to leave you deserving worse. And it's going to be a cycle where they're going to get their supremacy back, and then they're going to be treating you bad for treating them bad, and it's just going to be a vicious cycle if we live to see it. Somebody needs to take the model of what white supremacy is about and do the opposite to get the opposite result. You see what I'm saying? You can't act like that and then think you're going to be better, or think that your situation's going to last longer, or think that you're going to succeed, or however you think it's going to go. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work because it should not have worked for them, and they had to do a lot of things for a long time to establish the foundation for which all of this can happen. An established foundation that's going to have to be torn down by God himself. You are not going to duplicate that the right way. You're not going to build yourself up to that while that is still in existence. It's not happening. So you mimicking it is futile because you don't have the power to back it up. Now, this is what I've come to understand as a black person, which is why I don't want to mimic the oppressor. I want to do things he didn't do, things that he was afraid to do because he was afraid of losing that power. He depraved himself of compassion, understanding, and thus a good reputation because of it. And this is what we fight against. This is why we ain't going to mimic them, because we know what comes next ain't going to be good for them. You can't do that forever and not have a reaction. And I'm not talking about people. No, I'm just talking about karma. That all that which comes out of you comes back to you. And so because of it, it's like we don't want to mimic that because we don't want to deserve that. However, we got to understand that such a thing does exist. And because questions are not being answered in regards to certain topics, like why people are allowing other people to go with this or that, or without this or that, or why we need to do these social experiments that ultimately rile people against each other, whatever the case may be, is some evil in place that wants chaos to be in place. There's some evil in place that wants bad reputations to be attached to people who think they're powerful in the process of being attached to bad reputations. And this, my friends, is what evil is all about. The essence of evil is essentially meant to make the subject of that evil feel powerful, but actually be very, very powerless. In the grand scheme of things, what's coming for that entity is a response that is going to make it so that all the bad energy it put out in obtaining that bad reputation will also be thrown back at it in such a way that will allow it to suffer. This is what you sign up for when you engage in certain energy. It's what you sign up for when you line up with certain groups. This is what you sign up for when you go against what is morally your best. You may not always get it right, but if you know you're doing wrong, you best believe you're going to be welcoming wrong coming back at you. Now, these are things that happen to individuals. This is what happens to groups. This is what happens to countries. This is what happens to an entire planet. And as we continue to engage in these groups or in this way in this planet, we're going to find out that the story that's being told is still being written. The story that's being told about us is still being written. And a lot of people who've gotten away with a lot will not be remembered the way that they're being remembered right now. They're going to be ousted for what they've done. What's being done in the dark will be seen in the light, all of that stuff. So, because I believe this so true, I tell this to you. All of these politicians, whoever they may be, whether they go into the situation with their right mind in place or they going in deranged and evil, regardless, if they're not willing to answer questions about things they affect by way of their power via our voting them in, if they can't tell me why they are allowing such things to go on or why they can't sit down responsibly and answer that question, because maybe it's not the right time to answer that question walking through a hallway in a courtroom, I'll give them that. But you better damn sure tell me you're going to answer that question and do so later on. Give me the other side of what you're looking at. What I needed from that politician is to say, that is one angle of what we're looking at, and it's a devastating one. But what we also let through the door when doing so is this, and this. And because we need all of those things in the door, that 9-year-old girl situation just happens to fall through the cracks. That's what he needs to tell me to help me understand what he's looking at, so I don't want to kick him down the stairs. You see what I'm saying? Now that's the God's honest truth. That's what I need from him, to protect him and me from whatever the hell he's doing. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you do. At the end of the day, the subject itself, we're talking about protecting children. People who've been forced upon. It's triggering, man. For all people who've ever been through anything, for everybody who has a mother who has a compassionate heart in your life, and these are the type of things that you do not take lightly. And while it may have been set up for me to receive that information that way, by way of whoever set up the camera and followed this man around, all of that could have been set up to get me riled up. But it don't take away from the fact that he couldn't answer that question, and he didn't seem like he really wanted to acknowledge the severity of the harm of what was being described. And I think we needed that from that politician. I think we needed that. We needed him to say, I don't ever want that to happen. And we're going to work profusely to try to find a way to work it out so that she's protected, and that this, and this that we must push through by way of that bill can also get done. And we will work tirelessly until we find a way to do both. That is literally the only compassionate thing that would have been acceptable coming out of that politician's face. And that he wasn't human enough to know that tells me that we failed in our voting process. Because in our voting process, somehow we allowed everybody who wasn't smart enough not to vote him in to have power to do so. And that, my friends, is flawed. Y'all been having it so that everybody in this country votes. And that's something that we think makes sense. But when stuff like this happens, it makes you question that. I'm sorry. I'm not saying everybody shouldn't vote. I'm just saying that everybody should have to pass a test before they're eligible to vote that time. If you don't know the material, you shouldn't be testing. Because this ain't no test to help you with your ambition so that you can get your college degree, so that you can go on and chase down whatever American dream you want. This is what affects everybody else. So if you don't have the right answer on this test, we all fail. And for some reason in this country, that's just what we roll with. That's the logic. And I'm telling you, there's something else that we got to figure out, because this isn't working. It ain't working with a lot of laws. All the way across the board, all the way across the country. And the culture defines too much of these people's thinking. Culture. Marketing controls our ambition, controls our compassion. It often controls the different conversations we're going to have amongst each other, the lies we tell. Marketing. You know what I'm saying? Color schemes and rhythms and jingles and catchy phrases is what ultimately prompts us to action. And then we end up losing our lives. People we love lose their lives because of crap that we allow while behaving this way. If we don't see a reason to evolve in how we're handling this, then more bad will happen until we figure it out. And so that's where I'm at with it. I don't like none of it. I'm not saying I got the answers. I'm just saying what we're doing, we need to keep on leveling up. It ain't there yet. Nobody should be satisfied with how we're moving this way. It's not, doesn't work. When you sit down and do the math, you're going to find out that doesn't really work. So I've just been sitting here watching this my whole life, man. I've been watching people rock the vote my whole life. And I've never thought that it made sense to ask the open masses to really collectively agree on anything. Not if you want it to be the right answer. No. Every social experiment I've ever watched my whole life has told me that the masses together aren't going to get it right. For whatever reason. You know, we have been taught how to think differently than one another. We've been propped aside in our little marginal boxes, given everything that we need to be our individual selves, and our individual selves often find ourselves different than the other people on the other side of a situation. It was a concept that came to me in a dream last night. I'm pretty certain it's coming back to me specifically for this reason. But it wasn't, I don't remember who was involved. I don't even think it was a scenario. I think I was actually having a conversation sort of like this and talking out the scenario. I think that's how the dream actually showed it. But it was one of those things where it was a human being on the wrong side of a bunch of very serious subjects. And they on a fighting side to where they're warring. They will go to war for what it is that they got going on. The very opposite of what it is that would ultimately get them unalived. In other words, their army is kept together by a certain code on this side. And if you do this, and this, you're not going to make it through this. The other army criteria is the polar opposite. If you do what they are killed for, you're celebrated. If you do what they're celebrated for, you're killed. And that concept just hit me like a ton of bricks last night in the middle of my dream in some weird variation or form. And it just helped me understand that both sides would have to do the opposite of what it is that keeps them alive to survive in another situation. And they would have to absorb that or they wouldn't make it. And the only difference between them is where they were born and who they were raised by, and ultimately that they have to do this. It ain't no choice. No one has a choice. So you're not going to question it, because if you question it, then you have to walk down the path that takes you there. So you just going to do what you got to do. It ain't no different than not eating poison. You can't eat poison. You know, you're not going to make it. So it's like, if my poison is the other person's survival and my survival is the other person's poison, there are going to be certain things in our makeup that we ain't never going to be able to overcome unless we just simply make the choice to understand the other person's perspective and then put down what makes the most sense to us so we don't fight each other over that perspective. And maybe we need to keep our armies together. But we ain't in the army in this scenario. We are somewhere else where both armies are not, and we're just two human beings that gotta try to figure out a way to get through the day. Maybe we work together. Maybe we share a granddaughter or something. That type of thing. But we gotta find a way to not want to do to each other what the armies would have done to one another based on the differences we have when we're taught this way. It's a matter of survival to be this way. So him not being that way means in my culture he gotta go, and me being this way in his culture means I gotta go. That's how serious our differences is. And it ain't nothing but the fact that we were raised in cultures where this was true, and maybe them cultures weren't put together by people who knew what to do. Maybe those cultures was put together by maniacs, complete maniacs, and we just from a town where we didn't even know that or something. You know what I mean? Whatever. The point is, we're following stuff we shouldn't be following, don't know it, gonna die because of it, unless we make a decision not to. You see what I'm saying? That scenario came to me in a dream last night, and I bring it to you. And the reason why is because you're going to find yourself in situations where that may be the case. Maybe not that extreme, but that would be the case. Where you come from a place where if you did what he did, you're in trouble. And if he did what you do, he's in trouble. And y'all have to figure it out. Y'all have to figure it out. It's not as simple as y'all get to kill each other. In this situation, you just simply don't. Figure it out. And that's what this channel's about. By way of what it is we've been talking about on these therapy sessions for the last 350, whatever it is, they should be able to find a way to condition themselves to not want to harm one another, despite having everything in their DNA telling them that's what they're supposed to be doing. Why? Because everything in our heads that we go along with in this channel, with me specifically, gonna have me standing in one spot, not ever moving, because that's what comes naturally to me. Through the trauma and the various things in my mind, if I don't vet myself, all of that culture that would otherwise make me angry at you, in my scenario of course, then I'm gonna, by way of how I naturally am, just sit in one spot and get old and pass away. Because that's what my brain gonna want to do. That's what comes natural to me. Isolation, stay away from you regardless if I love you or not. I stay to myself, it keeps me safe, and thus I end up tortured. In my own torture, because I'm away from everybody I love without all the things that I need, slowly and surely not being happy about it. That's what I've come to find out I'm going to be if I do what comes naturally to me. So because I'm like this and I'm self-aware, I can teach everybody else how to undo certain wiring in their head that should not be there, that otherwise they will never vet, because they don't have to do what I do to keep themselves from standing still or doing something that's going to hurt them. So this is what I'm telling you. You can. If you was taught to be this, and this, and it's the only way forward, and I'm telling you that if you were like me, you would need to undo that in order to survive. You would need to. And so that's what it's about, man. It's about teaching people how to undo stuff that's in place that's supposed to be immovable. Not necessarily everything that should be there, because some stuff keeps us welcoming the right energy. That's a big part of the conversation. If you're going to undo things that's going to keep your reputation intact, then you're going to be welcoming the worst of reputation. And I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to keep your morality, keep love first, but that's my choice. That's what I want. You know what I'm saying? Point is, you got to be able to undo the conditioning that ultimately keeps you in harm's way, and whatever that may be needs to be undone. Whatever that may be, for the times you're in. And it is possible. And it is possible. But you got to want that. You got to believe that you can do it, and there has to be a certain desire to gruel through the change that must take place within yourself. You got to gruel through that. You got a desire to go through that, however suffering it may feel, to keep from ultimately staying in a space that comes comfortably to you, that ultimately is going to leave you in that worst way. You know what I'm saying? You got to want that. You got to be willing to hurt for that. And that's how you really articulate it, because a lot of people don't want to put in the work on various situations. They want to shy away from the grueling nature of what it is they're dealing with. But you got to understand that for which you are going to be grueling is going to get you through to the other side of what is best for you. It's no different than coming through the birth canal. Maybe it doesn't feel all that great, but once you get through it, you're alive now, you're home, you're free. Now you don't ever have to do that again. And that is the rebirth, so to speak. I'm not trying to turn this into a born again conversation, but it kind of is the same thing, because what you end up doing is suffering through the ills of being new. And that newness should, in theory, be good for you, because in this scenario, those things need to be undone. So that's what I'm telling people, man. Undo the wiring in your head that has been put together by all these cultures, hundreds of years of cultures. Don't be frustrated that your great-grandma and your grandpa did the same thing that we're asking you not to do in this case, because that's the point. A lot of this stuff has been in place for generations. That's why it's so effective. Because people we trusted got this stuff from people they trusted. Who got this stuff from people they trusted? Who got this stuff from people they trusted? Who got this stuff from people they trusted? Who got this from people who didn't mean them no good at all? And that's what I've been on. A lot of these dudes from the 1600s, 1700s, they were mentally ill. They were depraved mentally. They were crazy in different ways. They were evil and involved themselves in various different torturous energies that ultimately were primitive in nature because of the fact that they didn't know any better than to do this stuff. You know what I'm saying? The sickos of the yesterworld were a lot worse than the sickos of today, just because of information and understanding. And so what I'm telling you is, a lot of the stuff that we've been engaging in, generational stuff, particularly in this country, a lot of that stuff was made by warlocks and witches and demons and people who were Jeffrey Dahmers and Hitlers, and a lot of them people. We didn't know anything of mental health. We didn't know anything of spiritual understanding other than, it was a whole country full of people who were engaging in legal slavery. Like, you know what I mean? We weren't exactly, as a country, in the business of welcoming the best energy for ourselves, right? So the people who we were following, they were from that world. The people whose, poetry that we're saying and our country, Tizity, those people, yeah, they agreed that people like me should be in bondage without pay. People who look like me, just because of my look, just because of what my skin color looked, they truly believed, by way of the God they believed in, that they had a right to do horrible things to my grandparents, my great-grandparents, whoever was around, just because they was black. And when you say horrible things, nothing like what you're aware of in the internet. Nah, I'm talking take their skin and turn it into shoes. Get weird contraptions and just torture them and stuff, cut their skin open, all kinds of forceful energy on men, on women, with all types of different stuff, forcing them to be with animals, forcing them to be with their own. This is stuff that they did to black people. It wasn't just, go out there and work. Nah, they found weird ways to get off. The weird sickos of the world, the ones that we, like Saw and all the little Freddy Cougars, a lot of them were the ones who were the slaves owners. It was wild, mass murdering, crazy sickos were sometimes the ones who were wealthy enough to own slaves. So what they do with their slaves? Whatever their minds came to. And these are the stories they never gonna tell you about slavery. All they gonna tell you, they were working, they got over it 400 years, it sucked, but they got through it. Nah, they had weirdos, real sick, violent criminals who had full legal control over human flesh to do whatever they want. You understand what I'm saying? Sick ones, real sick ones, torturous individuals, people who got off on the pain of others. It was legal for them to do to their slaves what they chose. And so these are the people who I pledge allegiance to the flag. Every time I say that, this is in my mind and heart. And I want people, red-blooded Americans, to understand this. For those who really surround the flag and they have their esteem wrapped up in the flag and it's all about the patriotism of this country, I do not see the love you see. The beauty that y'all tell me from sea to shining sea, that's not there. What is there is the black skin shoes. That's what I see. You might as well be waving a flag with black skin. I'm telling you, man, and I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to your culture. I'm telling you, this is really real to me. And I don't expect people who look like me all agree to this. I know from very serious red-blooded American black folks who will not want me to say this. I don't care. You feel me? I'm different. This is how I embody the trauma of slavery. I do not trust our forefathers. They were slave owners. Slave owners were maniacs. Okay? It was a culture of agreed upon maniacal behavior. Agreed upon. Across the board. They can't even agree on guns across the board, but they can agree on black ass slaves being tortured across the board. And that is why I don't really want to hear the national anthem no more. I don't really want to see the flag waved at all. Especially when I know it's black art. I know that was made by a black woman. Most of the country don't know that was made by a black woman. But that, just like the White House, was physically put together by black bodies. Why are we celebrating it like that? These people were in bondage. They were slaves. They were unhappy. They never lived to find what happiness was because they spent their entire lives in bondage. That weighs heavy upon my emotions. It plays heavy upon my psyche when I live my day-to-day, every day. Every day. It doesn't go away. It ain't something that I can push aside. It's not something I can extract from my heart and just say, relax, it ain't that serious. Or look at other people who can't relate to it and say, damn, there's something wrong with me because I feel this and they don't. All of y'all need to feel me. That's how I feel about that. And look, it's a lot of people been through a lot of things. Jewish people ain't gonna want to hear this. I've been through that. Asian people are going through their own thing. I don't want to hear through that. People in war-torn places right now. Bro, we going through that right now. We don't want to hear that. You talking about something that didn't even happen to you. It happened 700 years, 400 years ago, whatever. I respect what I don't understand and value your pain as something that needs to end. But that is not going to take away from the fact of what I'm feeling and how it still affects my people to this day. We haven't overcome this. Even the images we show one another in regards to how we celebrate ourselves, we're still belittling ourselves in the eyes of those who are ultimately in control. They would never view themselves and those of them that they respect, they would never allow them to exploit themselves the way that we are allowing ourselves to be exploited. And the people that we most respect and the people we most celebrate are buffoons in a lot of cases because of how they are being presented to us. And this is something that is just another extension of that slavery. It's an extension of that. Ignorance, low frequency, low intellect, all these different images that they keep showing us are the most famous black people to help remind us of what it is that they don't believe we could ever become. Which is free of their bullshit. And I'm telling you, we are welcoming, by way of this new affirmative action era where we're getting rid of all the stuff that ultimately allows black folk. When we're getting rid of that stuff, we're ushering in something else. We're not ushering in the freedom of parity, which is what they are trying to do. They're welcoming in the re-emergence of marginalization and separation in a time where we have a grand connector in the internet, which wasn't in place last time everybody was separated. There wasn't no internet connecting everybody instantaneously when y'all was trying to separate people. In order to effectively separate people, they cannot communicate. That's why that's not going to work. We're still in the dark ages, America. By way of what it is that I see and where it is that we should be headed in regards to our compassion and the way that we look at different angles and we don't allow the middleman to tell us who we are and tell us who everyone around us is, we're still so far behind the 8 ball that we're barely figuring out the wheel. We just found the wheel. We just rolled the first stone. That's how far into our behind in evolution I feel we are in regards to our compassion and how we allow things to get voted in. And who we allow to get voted in. Might as well be throwing stones at each other. So far primitive. So that's what I wanted to say, man. Prayers out to everyone who's ever been forced upon, especially children who are affected by these laws, where they have to go full term with someone's child that isn't made in love in any way. I wish I had a solution for you. Only prayers. And so that is a helpless thing to consider when all the laws that are in place to keep me from being evil effectively do so, but do nothing to keep that from happening. See, when all the evil thoughts that come to my head when I think about reacting to somebody who votes that way, they effectively keep me off him. But they don't keep him off them little girls. And that's why we need to evolve, because it's not really protecting anything. They're not by way of what it is they're doing. It's like it's almost like you have security at the front door, letting people in one at a time, and then the entire back of the building is open and people flooding in. That's what that is. You got $7 million of security covering the front door, when all you gotta do is go around the back and you get in without no security, free. There's no one back there vetting the back of the entrance. Everybody can come in. There's nothing stopping anybody from doing nothing. All they gotta do is just be smart enough to walk around the back. Like, that's how we handle these circumstances in this country. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to the guns, this state, you can't even hold a gun. In that state, you can get it when you're 17. 18 years old, you got 2 assault rifles running out of Walmart. And you think people are going to vote universally the same way? Culture in California makes it so that I don't even want to see a stranger with a gun. Culture in Texas makes it so that I'm looking at strangers crazy if they don't have one. How are we voting the same? How do we have the same attitudes about different subjects? We're not going to, just by way of the culture itself. Just by way of what's normal to us. Self-defense. Half of y'all be talking about self-defense. Ain't no damn self-defense. You are murderers. That dude don't have no gun. He's punching somebody. He ain't shooting nobody. That's not self-defense. But in y'all southern states and y'all states where guns is normal, y'all look at me crazy when I say stuff like that's self-defense. No, it's not. You're murdering them. They don't have a gun. They can't defend themselves in the same way you're attacking them. You're a murderer. But it's like that. No, not in California. Yeah, in them, no. And you'll fight me tooth and nail about it, and you know what I'm saying? And you'll make the argument that a punch could kill and all that. And I can make the argument that a bullet definitely has a higher chance of killing, but you're going to do what you do. And because grandma voted that way, because great-grandpa voted that way, because great-great-grandpa voted that way, they all had guns, clearly. This is how it goes. Even though when I shoot a gun, I could miss and hit something I don't intend to hit. And in doing so, now we got an entirely different problem. But if it was self-defense, maybe it's not a problem because legally we're letting it through. He caused that, because if he wouldn't have did to me what I consider self-defense, I wouldn't have had to shoot at him, thus hitting somebody else when I accidentally missed. That type of flawed logic is how we continue to engage. And because of it, things get slipped through the cracks that are just not very smart. Let's just be honest. And then when it comes to the cracks, it's unprecedented. It's like, oh, so we let that in? All right, let's try to either figure out if we care. All right, let's see if the people care. They don't care? Cool. Oh, they do care? All right, let's patronize them. Put $3 billion into the patronizing campaign. We are sorry this happened. They still talking? All right, let's do some more. Phase 2 of the We Are Sorry campaign. Put a little more money into it. Celebrities. Get them. All right. They still upset? No? All right, good. That's how it goes. And we keep on going. We just keep on flowing through it. Yeah, let's do it again. You see that before? Yeah, I've seen it before. They're going to do it again. Yeah, they're going to do it again. Okay. Yeah, like, that's how we operate. And I'm like, yo, I'm not devoid of the ability to detect these patterns. This is another circle. We starting over again. Here we go again. Tired of it. I'm tired of all of it, man. I'm tired of all of it. I understand that certain conundrums do not have a solution. Maybe, like I said, if I focus on this, I'm gonna let that, and that all go by the wayside, and they need to be addressed just as bad as this does. But we need to figure out a better way of encompassing all of what needs to be done and the solutions. And if we're allowing our politics to keep us from evolving, if we're allowing our political ties, and I do mean ties because they will rope you away from what it is you should be doing based on it, they gotta evolve. If whatever you're doing with the money is allowing little girls to be in pain because of trauma that you are not doing anything about as the lawmakers, believe you me, you're not doing your job, and history is going to show that you didn't do your job, and we're going to remember you as people who allowed this to happen. And if we become smarter, we'll start digging into you to find out why you would be someone who would allow this to happen, and probably find out you're the type of person that would be on Epstein Island doing all of the evil stuff that ultimately people need to be put in jail for or what have you. That's what I think. And that is why I need answers for questions like that. You see what I'm saying? In the initial conversation, I was saying, I need them to answer that question, because in my mind, all he's showing me that he's somebody who's more than likely doing some of the worst things in the world and hasn't been caught for it. And the first thing I'm thinking of, that politician is probably doing all the worst stuff. I'm putting stuff on his name that I am pretty certain ain't even on his name because he didn't answer the question. I let my imagination go, and I could put him in all kinds of different suits and ties and all different types of hats he's going to be wearing in my head based on him not answering that question, leaving him, if I'm crazy, in danger. You see what I'm saying? These are conversations people are afraid to have, but they need to be had. Because somebody's going to kick him down the stairs one day. Not him necessarily, but someone like him who doesn't answer a question like that. And it ain't going to be because we understand why he didn't vote properly. It's going to be because he didn't vote properly and we ain't asking that question because we're emotionally distressed about it. And I'm telling you right now, that is where this heads. That's where this goes. And I tell that to everybody on any side of any conversation. You could be on the polar opposite side of something to the point where if you do what they do, it could get you unalive. But I'm telling you right now, when it comes to conversations such as this, we have got to figure out a way to get out of our own way so that we can see what's in between us manipulating our points of views. And that is exactly what it is. Because you best believe if you are so emotionally hell-bent on some bull crap, especially if it's tied to your group or some selfish nonsense that's low frequency in nature, believe you me, there's going to be something, an entity, a group, a person, or something smarter than you who's going to use that energy and that of your enemy's energy against both of y'all. All that low frequency racist nonsense, all that low frequency homophobic nonsense, believe you me, someone is watching you and saying, I can make money off of them being that way, and going to just keep watching. And I'm going to manipulate them, and I'm going to manipulate them. They're going to fight over each other. They're going to drop the plunder. I'm going to pick it up. And I'm going to apply that method again when it makes sense for me to do so. They're waiting in the wing to do this at all times, and they gather power every time they do it. So y'all keep playing around with your little racism and all this stuff, thinking you're on the top of the world, thinking you're making God happy, doing all that stuff. You keep playing around with, people's reproductive rights and various different things that don't have nothing to do with you males. They ain't got nothing to do with your bodies. You don't even know halfway how to clean yourself if you were to turn into a woman overnight. You shouldn't have no say-so in what happens to a little girl's body when she goes through some trauma like that. You shouldn't be in the room. You should be in jail for even having something to say, as far as I can tell. You open your mouth to affect what happens to that little girl, and your ass need to be thrown in jail. In my mind, I may lose some people with that one, but I've never been more serious. I shouldn't have a say-so. I don't even know what to do in that situation. If I were put in that situation, I would need people to help me, no different than she needs people to help her. So why do I have a say-so? And how she's supposed to be able to handle that? It's the arrogance of a culture that allowed itself to believe itself to be smarter than it is without putting in the work to know why it should or should not. It's an arrogance that allows someone to even agree to a culture where this is possible. This is why money is so problematic as it pertains to worshiping it, because it gives people, when they have a lot of it, the guise that they are wise enough to control these things properly. I got a lot of money. I encompass wisdom. No, you don't. No, you don't. You may not see a fourth of the angles necessary to make the right decision, but your ass got a lot of money, don't you? Evolve. BDF 44. I thank you all for watching.